Hey, we are live. We
Hey,
have the pause and all. Hey, Don, welcome to Captive Audience on a wonderful Wednesday.
good afternoon, Sonny. It's always great to be back on Wonderful Wednesday with my pal Sonny and the rest of you.
Yes, well, we missed you last week, and but we're glad to have you back. It was different having been with David on Wednesday, and then with Kevin on Friday. But anyway, it's a beautiful day outside, and it's like nearly 100 over here.
Ooh, baby, you guys brought the heat out there.
Yeah, but
We're going to get that. I think we're getting that Saturday. It's only about 80, 85 here, but we know what's coming.
yes, it is. Hey, Bobby, we think you're family too, girl. So, well, I'll tell you that we've got a few things to talk about, and one of them I think we're gonna just get started on student loans, on a little bit of school stuff. There is a study. This is out of Just the News, and not a study, but a third of student loan recipients spent more money in anticipation of debt forgiveness. And pretty much they spent 5% of the overall in this study said they spent like $10,000 more than they would have. And now this study, it was with the survey was for 977 borrowers. They were questioned in this study. So of, let's just call it even 1,000, almost is, a third of them went into debt more thinking they're going to get their student loan paid off. Isn't that crazy?
It's absolutely nuts. And it speaks to so many things being wrong on so many levels. I mean, for one, it's absolutely criminal what these universities are doing to these kids, really. I mean, they're just lying to them. I mean, to make them think that name your degree in whatever the general program is going to be worth being fifty to $100,000 in debt is like insane. Um, they should be required to sign a line item that says, "I recognize that I'm paying this much, and when I get out, the probability that I'm going to earn this much with this degree is this." I mean, there's nothing else they'll pay for, with the exception of possibly their first home, that's going to cost as much as this degree. And most of the time, a lot of people don't realize somewhere in the order of only about 30% of students actually graduate from college. That means they're going in debt and they only have a degree in the first place. I mean, the whole thing is insane. And in talking to my kids who are kind of in that age group, this is another thing that I stumbled across. Unlike our generation, we went to college, we did work study, we worked in the summers. These kids aren't doing that. They're basically having a 4-year party. So let's say that you were going to get out and owe 50 grand. If you were working, maybe you get out and owe 25 grand. But since they're partying the whole time, they're not doing anything to reduce the already insane costs of it. It's just crazy what's going on here. It's really sad that the society is letting these kids down by lying to them and putting them in a situation where they're going to be in debt for the first 20 years of their adulthood.
Yes, and you know, this debt forgiveness program was the big lie of the Democrat Party. And so then to go, well, gosh, I'm going to get this forgiven. I might as well just incur a little bit more. I can't even fathom that. They haven't made the connection of debt is what we owe, and nothing's
Mhm.
free. There's no free lunch. It's coming out of us, the people,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
it's them too, because they're going to be paying taxes another
Mhm.
for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. And the moral hazard of this whole thing. So let's just say there's a kid named Joe who lives in Tennessee in the Appalachians. He's going to get out of high school and go get a blue collar job. So he's going to be responsible for paying off the debt of some kid who's got a middle class background from Scarsdale, New York. It's like insane. It's completely radically unfair, and I think unconstitutional to boot.
So and yes, of these students that were surveyed, 34% of them said they would have spent less money had they not been at least somewhat confident of receiving debt relief, and three-quarters of them indicated they were either somewhat or very confident that their debt would be forgiven.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's quite the disconnect. It is the Democrat lie that, you know what we're going to do. They're buying votes. That's, in my opinion, they're trying to buy votes. And part of the we're going to give you everything and take care of you cradle to grave, including your student loans. And it is the big lie, and many people have bought into it. Of course, Biden is still saying, don't worry, we don't have to listen to the Supreme Court, we've got another way to go around it.
Well, it is a Democrat lie. That's been the Democratic strategy for the last 30 or 40 years, just buy the votes. And that's just another way of buying votes. And hopefully a certain percentage of these poor kids, I feel really bad for them, are going to wake up one day and realize they've been completely
Yeah.
bamboozled. Um, and the whole country's been bamboozled about this thinking that you have to have a college degree to be worth something. People eventually realize that that's a lie as well.
Absolutely. And so payments are slated to resume in October. The student loan payments have been on hold through all of the COVID craziness. So they're
Mhm.
apparently slated to resume in October, and 58% of those in the survey indicated they were unprepared to resume paying off their debts.
Meaning they probably weren't working.
Right, right.
Well, are we going to have debtor's prison again? What are we going to do here? Because they're not forgiving those loans.
Right, right. We're not, and they're they're they are upside down. They're upside down and getting a start to life. And as we were talking earlier, you can get a underwater weaving basket degree in any university, and it still costs you a lot of money. And it doesn't matter if it was at Harvard underwater basket weaving or the University of Oregon. It's the same degree. You can spend a lot of money, or you can save some money.
Well, I think people are gradually getting the message that it's a giant scam, and fewer people are doing it. And that's really the only thing that's going to change it is when people stop doing it. Because a number of these schools need to go out of business. That's the bottom line.
Definitely.
And
So I want to stay on the school deal. I've just posted another story, but it's a little bit different topic. It's a lot different topic, quite frankly. And it
mhm.
is, guess how much an Ohio school district spent to instruct educators on how to hide kids' gender transitions from parents.
Well, probably the sky's the limit.
Well, actually, no, but the Columbus City Schools spent $24,000 on a 2-day seminar for teachers, counselors, and other educators on queer and trans inclusion. The seminar recommended teachers avoid sharing a student's new gender identity with parents, and that there be a private place within the student's records in order to keep this. And as I'm
Yeah.
reading this story, and I'm going, what? Wait, what about parents' rights? Well, then in here it says the attendees were told transgender and non-binary students have FERPA. I never even heard of FERPA. FERPA, protected right to privacy. This extends to a student's gender identity, birth name, sex assigned at birth, and medical history. This includes privacy rights from parents and caregivers. So Don, I looked up FERPA. Do you know what FERPA
Mhm.
is?
I don't.
Okay. It is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. It is a
Mhm.
federal law that affords parents the right to have access to their
Mm.
children's education records,
Mhm.
and the right to seek to have the records amended, and the right to
Mhm.
have some control over the disclosure of personally identifiable information from the education records. So these people that were attending this in Ohio were being lied to. They were giving them false information. So
Mhm.
FERPA is like our HIPAA in medical, right? But this has to do
Right.
with the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. So the parents absolutely, by federal law, have a right to everything that is happening in the school system.
Now, see, Sonny, in this, what you're describing, these are the reasons why I believe that for the most part, public schools should be abolished, completely abolished, because you can pass all the rules you want, but a human being capable of doing that to somebody else's kid is a human being that a law is not going to stop. What are you going to do? Put a camera in every room? Put a parent inside of every room sitting next to this person? You can't do that. I just think you got to fire them all. One of two things: you either got to abolish the system or fire them all and start over again. The next best thing, of course, is some kind of a voucher system. But so people can choose to remove their kids from these kinds of places. But these people, the whole educational system's filled with people who gravitate towards teaching are these Marxists. I mean, this is like a religion for them. And so to turn your kids over to be literally raised by people who are capable of doing this is just not wise. You
No,
know.
it isn't. So, I got some education today in reading this story and then looking up what FERPA is.
Mhm,
So I posted what the student privacy, and that's right from the federal government's
mhm,
website. And
mhm,
what is FERPA? you know,
mhm.
and so for people to take a look at that and, because if
Well,
you are
these
going
people.
to school board meetings, or you are going to the parent teachers conferences, or you're dealing with the educators at your child or grandchild's school, it's like I said earlier, it's like the HIPAA rules for your medical records, and the parents are the
Mhm,
people that have the
mhm,
right to all of the information. It is not the teachers union that is,
mhm,
I would say, pushing this type of thing,
mhm,
and into school districts. So it's alarming at what length this whole transgender push and secrecy, and because a parent needs to know if their child has got some mental health issues, medical
mhm.
issues, psychological issues, so that they can decide the best course of action for their children.
But see what this fight really is about is these Marxists. You have to understand. They think the children belong to the state. They don't belong to the parents. They belong to the state. It's a very utilitarian way of thinking of things, and so this is part of the. This is another one of those ways to drive a wedge between the family, the parents, and the kid, and destroy the family. That is like a basic tenet of Marxism, and that's what these people are all about. This is very strategic and it's very intentional. And until more American citizens start waking up to this fact and removing their kids from this system, it will keep doing this. I mean, this is the intention of what they're doing. Just as a quick aside, now this is Washington State. So it's the neighboring state to Oregon. You may have heard about State Bill 5599. Our governor signed a bill in the middle of the night that allows kids who've fallen into let's say it's a runaway kid, right? And then the state's looking after them. If that kid wants to get a sex change, a mastectomy, gender change, whatever it is, right? Then they can do that without parental notification. So that's the law in Washington State right now. That's that's what we're up against.
Was that a executive order, or was that some legislation?
The legislators just signed off on it, and he signed the bill. They have the numbers. Now, there is an initiative that's being put forth that if it gets 400,000 signatures, I think it is, it'll be put on the ballot to reverse that. And I have no doubt that it will definitely win. But that's the leadership of Washington, and no doubt leadership of Oregon will do the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why our part of why our senators walked out during this last legislative session was to stop House Bill 2002 A, B. I don't even know what alphabet they ended up on with that.
Hmm.
And because it was to keep the information from children, from the parents, and
Hmm.
and as I saw that, also to make Oregon to be a destination to come and
Hmm.
have, just bring your kids from another state, like
Sure.
Bobby says, legal kidnapping, right? Bring your kids from another state and we'll take care of them, and when they'll have sanctuary here. And They can go through transgender without the parents' knowledge and all of that. It's
Same strategy with abortions. I mean, Oregon and Washington both do this.
yes.
That's why we're the worst.
And California
In
too,
California. Yeah.
which is a very good segue into this next story is about in California, the California Assembly Committee blocks a bill to make child trafficking a serious felony. Well, who wouldn't want it to be a serious felony? You know, child
Democrats.
trafficking, basically, you are kidnapping children and selling them into sex slaves and and sexual abuse, just horrible abuses on children. And so, and at the vote, the audience were yelling, "You're horrible, and you should be ashamed of yourself." And human trafficking victims embraced and sobbed in front of the dais as this was done. And apparently, so this happened on Tuesday. So the Assembly of the Public Safety Committee blocked this measure that would have classified human trafficking of a minor as a serious felony under the state law, because right now it's a felony, but it's not a serious felony. Let's say they get sentenced to 8 years, they can get out in 4 years for good behavior, where a serious felony, then they would have to do like the time all the time. And it also, if they were to commit another act like that again, they could go to prison for life. Which, when you're doing this type of horrific acts, you should be in prison for life.
Well, the reality is just put them in the general population and give them about a 6-month sentence. That would probably do the trick. They can go out like Jeffrey Dahmer.
Quite possibly, you know. So it's again like what you just said. I'm sure what the governor did in Oregon or in Washington went against what the people really want. And this is where our legislators are not doing what's in the best interest, especially the Democrats, in the best interest of what the people of the state want.
Well, they don't care what the people of the state want. They're Marxists. What they want is the most important thing. I mean, these people are malignant narcissists. Yeah. That's the only way you can describe them. All they're interested in is in what I want. And whatever I want to do at the moment is what I want. If I want a minor, you know, then my need is to have a minor, then I'm going to have a minor. If my need is for a teenager, I'm going to have a teenager. If I want to have a sex change and force you to acknowledge some gender that I'm not, then I'm going to do that. That's what we're up against. We're up against the giant lie. And there is no negotiation with this. There is no middle ground. For once, you know, the conservatives are going to just have to draw the line in the sand and fight. There is no more places to negotiate here.
Right. And in California, this particular measure was halfway through the state's legislative process. It cleared the Senate unanimously with broad bipartisan support. But none of the 6 Democrats on the Assembly Public Safety Committee in their House, apparently, were willing to cast a vote on the measure Tuesday, and only 2 Republicans voted yes. So, and it's unconscionable, quite frankly, that people would kowtow to their political party pressure, namely the Democrats, to not look out for what's the best interest of children. It really shows the true colors of what's going on. They don't care at all.
Well, we have a leadership class that's immoral. That's it. There's really nothing else to say. And until that leadership class is replaced by people who have some degree of morality on either side of the aisle, that's what's happened to us over the last generation. We've allowed our leadership and the general population, and we'll get to this in a moment when we talk about eventually that movie. The general population is not where our leadership class is. I think that the media has hyped and blown up all these sick people for so long, that if you look at it, you're likely to believe that most of the population is crazy. But look around your neighborhood, drive down your street, go to your grocery store, you don't see that stuff. You don't see 65-year-old men wearing diapers and twerking in front of 5-year-olds.
Right.
Um, this is a media driven thing. The leadership class, yes, they're like that. Yes, they're going to Epstein's Island. Yes, they're taking advantage uh, of minors when they can traffic them. Yes, they're doing the porn sites and all that. But the general population is not there. Not there yet, anyway. The trajectory is not good, but we ain't there. And there's a lot of positive signs to demonstrate that we're not. And I'm sure we'll get an opportunity to speak to that in a moment.
You're right. And here's one positive sign, the opposite of what California did or what's happening in Washington and even Oregon. A Georgia state legislator, a senator, defected to the GOP. And
Yes.
that was yesterday. And she is Senator Misha Maynor. And she says, she's a former Democrat who represents Georgia's 56th different district. And she says the Democrat Party is not where I want to be. And they are pressuring her to follow this strict narrative. And she says, no, I can't do that. I have got to, she said that, let's see, the Democrats forced her out for not towing the party line. There appear to be two issues that helped push her toward the right. One involved an incident with a stalker in which the perpetrator got off with light punishment. And the other one is her support for school choice, even as some Rhino Republicans crossed the aisle to defeat the vote on it. But she says we've got to support the school choice, parents' rights, and opportunities for children to thrive. So kudos to her for standing up with what's right. And I think it's great. Welcome to the Republican side, because we all have to, everybody, all of our representatives that are voting on these things, they do have to vote their conscience. Now, quite frankly, I don't know how the left can go to sleep at night and live with their decisions that they're making. That's
they're sick and immoral. And it takes courage to do what that person did. I mean, anytime you start catching flack, what's that old Air Force adage? That means you're over the target, right? It's easy to do things that make you popular and highlighted. All these people patting themselves on the back at the Academy Awards and in Hollywood because they stepped out. They're not doing anything special. They're not taking any arrows like people did in the 60s. They're getting patted on the back for this stuff, which tells you that it's all a lie.
Yeah.
The people that get patted on the people who are taking the risk and catching the flack are the ones who are espousing Judeo-Christian ethics and values.
Yeah, and so talk about, we're talking about the children in that, and the movie Sound of Freedom. You saw, as we were talking before we started, that you went and saw that last night, right?
I did, and I would highly, highly recommend that everybody listening to this or watching this go see it. And I was a recalcitrant viewer. I heard the topic, and I was like, I just don't know if I can watch this right. My wife talked me into it. We went last night. Here's the beauty of it. On a weeknight, the theater was like 75% full. I couldn't believe it, which tells you that's an indirect measure of what the general population thinks. To have a theater be 75% full on a weeknight, are you kidding me? People don't go to theaters anymore. For one thing, ticket prices are outrageous, right? So they're not going unless they really want to be there. And by comparison, what's this movie? This is another version of the Raiders of the Lost Ark that Disney spent a fortune on, like way more marketing dollars, and the thing is tanking. And this movie is like number one. And there's a reason for it, right? They're speaking to what people want to hear and know about. So it was a sensational movie, is all I can say. And it's got to be one of the most hidden crimes. It's as hidden as abortion. It's not right in front of your eyes unless you're participating in this, or if you're in law enforcement, maybe you see it. But I knew it was bad. I had no idea it was that bad.
Yes, well, I went and saw it as well. And in the link, I posted angel.com tickets, Sound of Freedom. And you can just go to that link and put in your zip code and find out where it is playing at what theater and all of the information right there. So it's too easy to see exactly where it's playing. And I went to a matinee, and I'll tell you, for me, even before COVID, I probably went to one, maybe two movies a year, because
Mhm.
frankly, I've for years have realized I don't care to support an industry that doesn't support my values, right?
Right,
There's
right.
very little that I want to go see there. And
Mhm,
but when I see something that's quality and good, then you bet.
mhm,
I want to go see it, and I want to support those that are making that type of film. And so the
mhm,
Sound of Freedom, the Angel Studios is got other films that will
mhm,
be, I think, very, very good to go see.
mhm,
And I'm glad you saw it. Here, Bobby says she hadn't been to a theater in like 20 years, but
mhm.
it's that is a movie for the big screen.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we ought to support. We got to remember those of us who are kind of boycotting the whole industry. I get it because it stinks. I remember when my wife and I were young, we were married. We go to movies all the time. We go to movie. I think that's only the second movie we've seen in like 3 years because we've kind of bailed on the whole industry. That said, when something comes out that's worthwhile, that supports our values, we need to support the people who are doing that because they're doing it. They're taking a tremendous risk. You know how difficult it must have been for them to get a conservative movie like that to market. Remember, we have a political class that basically participates in Epstein's Island, which this movie indirectly is basically a facial at that stuff, right? So you know our political class is really hating this movie
Yes.
and the fact that it's getting this kind of play. So this is like a vote in favor of basic morality. So this is the sort of thing that we really need to get behind. And then one other thing I thought that Jim Caviezel, who's the actor, um, did such a great job of saying at the end. You want to stay and listen to. I think at the very end they go through the credits, and he wants you to stick around and listen to his 2 minute talk he gives at the end because that talk is
Yes,
sensational.
it is.
And one of the things I thought he said and that was so impactful was that the power of the storyteller. And he talked about what's the lady's name, Harriet Beecher Stowe, who wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin. And Abraham Lincoln said that her writing of that book was as instrumental to the reversal of slavery as anything a politician or anything a war general had done in the field. I think that's absolutely true. And this is one of those movies similar to the one that Abby Johnson did with regard to what was it, the Planned Parenthood a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Same kind of a thing. We need to support these kinds of stories because they tell the reality. We listen better when there's a story behind it. We can give numbers all day long about the number of kids that are being trafficked, but when you put a human face on it, talk about a specific instance, and in this case, a true life
Yeah.
story, which was the other thing I didn't realize. But when you go see this, is a story about a was it a border agent
Yes.
that
Well,
chased it? It's a
I
federal
think
agent.
he wasn't a border agent. He was a federal agent that was busting the perpetrators of child
Right.
sex, right, and
Yeah.
pornography.
So yeah, so here's a gentleman who went above and beyond the call of duty in order to track down and find a kid for a specific dad who lost both of his kids to sex trafficking. What a powerful story! You'll never forget it. I'll tell you that. I mean, there's some stories you just never forget,
Right.
and this is one of them.
This is one, and wonderful that his wife supported him in making this decision, realizing,
Oh,
you know what, that's
what a courageous woman,
yes,
because he
both
might
of
never
them.
come back. Yeah.
Both of them. And so, and there are groups out there that are searching out those that have been trafficked and are fighting this all over the world. And I think it is wonderful that
Think about this from a historical perspective. If you know a little bit about history, this has always been there. It's been around for time immemorial. Um, this sort of thing was going on. I mean, I really had a lot of study in the Middle Ages and Battle of Lepanto, 15th, 16th, 17th history. That kind of slaving has been going on forever. What's shocking, I think, for the average American citizen is when you step back and realize that so many of our fellow citizens are participating in this stuff.
yeah,
And number one, number two, that our government class participates in it. is what makes you sick. And I think that's what's new to my mind anyway.
Yes, yes, and I agree with that. I agree with that. To the level of where it's going all over. I
Well,
mean,
we have a current government that's got the southern border open like a spigot, not even bothering checking the ID of kids or of minors who cross the border with people who don't even look like the adult in the car with them. Come on now.
right,
I mean, how blatant is that?
right, right. What else have you got for us, Don?
Uh, Yeah, so while I got my blood boiling with that one, so here's more to the positive though, and it kind of relates to what we just mentioned about the number of people in the audiences. I view that as a huge positive. Speaking to positive things, what that means is an indication that your average fellow citizen is not crazy as the media would have you think they are. And a couple of other indicators: you look at the pounding that Target's taking, you look at the pounding that Anheuser Busch is taking, the Bud Light thing. You look at the pounding that Disney. I mean, Disney, it just opened up a fresh can of whoop ass on them, basically, right? I mean, I was reading where the amusement park attendants, like down in Florida, is like no lines anywhere. Can you imagine going to Disneyland in the summer and there's like no lines?
Wow. No, actually, I can't because just a few for before COVID, that would have been
Mhm.
unthinkable, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's like people are like just they're leaving Disney in droves, which tells you that there is, to use Jerry Falwell's old thing from the '90s, a moral majority out there that's pretty much had enough. They're fed up. The box office sales of the I think I mentioned this earlier. The latest installment of the Raiders series is just like tanking, like could be the worst ever. So people have just had it, and Hollywood's like just getting killed, and that's exactly what needs to happen. Vote with your feet, vote with your dollars.
Yes, and then the writers say we're going to go on strike. Well, who cares?
Good.
Who cares? I'm sorry, but
we we need you to be on strike.
and then I was looking around the internet today. I saw, in fact, one headline somewhere that said Anheuser Busch says if you don't buy Bud Light, we're going to be laying off people just like you. Using the fear factor and threats. You know what?
Yeah,
Hey, I feel
you
sorry
know.
for people that might be losing their jobs. I feel sorry
Mhm,
for the factories that are the glass factory that got shut down or the can
mhm,
factory. But at the
mhm.
same time, I'm not because
Yeah, well, the other way you got to look at this is, you know, how do you feel about working for a company that's destroying your country and destroying your fellow citizen? I'm sure there were a lot of people a lot of Germans who worked for Bayer, and they were happy, like, to make the gas that they were dropping on the poor Jews, right?
right.
I mean, maybe some of them should have went on strike. Maybe should have quit their job and found another job. You can do that in this country. You don't have to work for an unethical company.
That's
If you're an
true.
employee at Target, there's other retailers you can go work at. There's other beer companies you can go work at.
There
You
are
don't have
so
to work.
many job openings. People are still screaming for people to come to work and somebody who will actually show up day in and day out and punch a time
Mhm,
clock and come do the job that they've been
mhm,
hired to do.
mhm.
There is a lot of work out there. There's a lot of jobs out there, and so you're absolutely right. You don't have to stay working for one of those companies that's going woke
Mhm.
and getting broke.
Yeah, we're not Germany in the 1930s yet, where somebody's kicking your door down and forcing you to go work someplace or do something you don't want to do. That's where they want to get to.
True.
But if we don't start making these kinds of decisions, we'll get there faster. It's like we have to just step up, and everybody's going to have to take a hit.
Yeah.
These are minor hits compared to what our forefathers went through.
Yeah. It's we have things to do to help turn the tide in our nation. What else have you got, Don?
Yeah, yeah. So let's see. Gosh, I was just looking at this. That Sound of Freedom really got me going. Then there was, oh, this is more of a close to home thing on the Portland front they were talking about. I saw where they have possession of an illegal substance as a Class E felony. I never even heard a Class E violation. I never even heard of that. And a Class E is basically the equivalent of like $100 fine. So it's like a traffic ticket. I mean, traffic tickets are more than that. So there's like literally no penalty for doing wrong. And by the way, if you want to get out of it, all you have to do is call a hotline and say that you have a problem, and then they'll like wipe that from your record. So
So, well, we've legalized drugs here in Oregon, right? Essentially. So, what would constitute a Class E?
I'm just not sure, you know. And remember, I guess we were talking earlier. They were talking about uh, allowing, like, setting up places where you can get drug paraphernalia for free. That the government, and I
Oh,
guess
yeah.
they reversed themselves on that. But how is getting access to like aluminum foil and whatever other goodies you need in order to get fired up
Right.
is
Right.
and yeah, how is that helpful?
Not at all. Not at all. It's not helping them at all. Um, Actually, Colombia isn't a real hellhole. Honduras is a lot rougher. Some areas, depends on where you are, Pat.
Mhm,
But Colombia is such a beautiful nation. But like every nation or in every state and every city, you have areas that you don't go to, right? It's undesirable areas. Well, Colombia, I've traveled in Colombia quite a bit,
mhm,
and there's areas that you don't go to because there is a lot of high drug trafficking there. And I
mhm,
certainly didn't want to uh, be around that and take those types of risks. But otherwise, oh, the people are wonderful and the country is absolutely beautiful.
mhm.
Yeah, it is. And that's pretty much the case the world over.
Yeah,
It's the governments that are having issues, and
yeah. Oh, it is true. I mean, to your point, I saw this in, I can't remember, it was a newspaper article about comparing how people respected different governments, and they compared what the United States to the rest of the world, other countries, other Western countries, we'll call it, in the '90s, in the early 2000s, and then more recently. And we went from like a really high approval rating by the rest of the world in terms of how other citizens viewed our government to like now like being at the bottom of it, right? And it's really a sad thing. I think the able to remember is it's not Americans per se. It's the government. Just like you look at like Russia or you look at Ukraine, you know, the people are great, but their governments are like just horrendous.
right.
Um,
That's exactly right. That's
and,
exactly right.
and our governments fall into the level of one of these banana republics.
Yes, let's go back. Look at history. When was they ever found cocaine at the White House, Don? You know,
Un- and you
it's
mean to
it's
tell me,
unfathomable,
and they
and they're
can't
actually
figure out
throwing our Secret Service under the bus.
and you can't figure out who look you know how many cameras, can you imagine how much surveillance there is in the White House, and you can't figure out where that came from? Of course, all of us know where it came from.
And then they say, "Well, it was found here," and then the next day, "Oh no, it was found over here." Well, now they've changed the location 3 times, and I'm telling you, it's just a huge cover up. But
Mhm,
it is so embarrassing
mhm,
as an American to have our White House and the people in our White House and working in our government at this such a low level. Quite
well,
frankly, scumbags.
the
That
level of
you are not
corruption.
respecting where we are and the caliber of people that are around the White House and running our nation. It's deplorable. Now,
Yeah.
I'm a deplorable. Those are the conservatives, right? But you know what I mean.
Right, anybody who's got a moral code is deplorable. Yeah, the level of corruption that we have in our federal government, well, definitely the federal government is like stunning. I mean, think about this for a moment. The When in history, and it's never happened in our history, but it happens all over the world all the time, that you would imprison or attempt to imprison your biggest adversary so that you don't have to run against them in a campaign. That's precisely what's happening here. And the thing that's maybe even more appalling than just what I just said is that we have a media completely in cahoots with it. I mean, 30 or 40 years ago, you had a media that was at least relatively fair and balanced, and would report these kinds of things. Now they are basically the equivalent of a Pravda in the Soviet Union back in the Cold War. They're just mouthpieces for the one party state. It's just disgusting. I don't know how these people look in the mirror. I really don't.
I agree with you, and it's the propaganda machine. And it's amazing, on some of the conservative programs when they'll show all the mainstream media, all the alphabets having the very same talking point, all on the same at the same time, 5 o'clock hour or 6 o'clock hour, or whatever, and they are using the exactly same talking point from the different talking heads to that one, main MSNBC and ABC, CBS, and all of them. It's
Verbatim. I mean, like
verbatim,
literally
right? And that's
verbatim.
where you just go. It's the propaganda. This is the talking point tonight on this
Yeah.
subject.
Yeah, without any rationale whatsoever, strictly name calling. I saw something where they were calling this movie we were just talking about. What is it? The Sound of Freedom. They were saying was so the name calling is just a conservative talking point movie when it's a real story.
Yes.
This doesn't matter if you're conservative. This doesn't matter if you're liberal. This doesn't matter if you're Democrat or
This is
Republican.
this is a
This is
nonpartisan issue.
Right. This is a nonpartisan issue about an event that actually happened. And the data is widespread that it's a worldwide. And all they can do is call names.
Yeah.
It's just appalling, these people. It really is.
It is. And like Patty said, the mockingbird media, that's
Yeah.
exactly what it is. It
But
is.
this is why, at the end of the day, the most important thing for a human being is morality. We have to share some kind of a moral code.
Yeah.
Because if we did share a moral code, you wouldn't be seeing this stuff. Um, and it's precisely why I think it was John Adams said, it's this is a constitutional republic. It's only fit for moral people. You have an immoral people, it won't last. And what was Ben Franklin's famous adage? You have a constitutional republic if you can keep it. And the only way you're going to keep it is you're going to have moral people. I still think we're in a position where the majority of the population is still moral. Is our leadership class is not, and somehow we have to find a way. And when I say leadership class, I mean leadership class at every institutional level. It's not just the government. It's corporations, it's churches, it's across the board who are in cahoots with this stuff because this is how they get their power. And somewhere in there, the average citizen is going to have to start standing up and getting loud because there's a lot more of us than them.
It is. And because of the global push, they are really corporations are getting pressured, really pressured. You might even say blackmailed, right? To toe the line, which is why I think we seeing these different companies coming out with their rainbow thing and whatever the issue is of the day,
Well,
and
yeah.
pushing the transgender issue, and yet because anybody who is a transgender
Hmm.
or feeling that they are or need to be, they
Hmm.
are such a minority in our society, such a minority, and
Yeah.
yet it's getting pushed. And this is why I feel like it is really uh, almost like blackmail. I mean, to pressure the corporations, and they're allowing it to happen. They could say no.
Yeah. Well, and this, I'm in the world of speculation here. So this part I'll say, you have to think to yourself, nobody would be stupid enough. Let's just go to the Budweiser thing. No one would be stupid enough to think that that's going to drive sales of a blue collar bill beer like Budweiser. You might have one or two people in leadership that dumb, like the vice president that they had who went from a woke university. But the vast majority of these people who run these businesses, they've been around the block. I do not believe that they thought that that was going to be a positive for the company. And even if they did, they would certainly not have continued to do it, or to double down on it or not apologize, right? Because they're motivated by the dollar. But so I think what's happening here is that they're being personally motivated to do something else. Now, whether that be through threat, whether that be through economic incentives, clearly they're disengaged from what's in the best interest of the stockholders. Um, Same with Disney. You would keep doing things that we know are destructive. You make a movie that's completely woke, spend a fortune on it. You know the formula for success for something like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Let's be blunt. The formula for success for the Raiders of the Lost Ark was Judeo-Christian good versus evil. Does it get any more obvious than the search for the Holy Grail? That was the name of the movie. Or the what was it? The Ark of the Covenant. I mean, how much
Right.
more Christian can you get? You make a movie like that, good versus evil, is going to make a fortune in the box office. You can't figure that formula out. I'm not even in Hollywood. I can figure that out. Why do you think Star Wars is such a success? It was
Right.
versus evil. You do a
Yeah.
good versus evil play and good wins, you're going to make money. They know this. So why are they not doing it? I think because they're being incented not to do it by those who would run places, by those who want to govern us from Brussels, because that's
Right.
the new capital of the world. That's what
Right.
they want. That's what they want.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, I'm going to post the very last thing that I have here, and this is did you hear about the solar storm that is supposed to be here tomorrow?
No, I didn't in the Northwest.
Yes, and so actually there's a solar storm tomorrow that is
Mhm.
expected to make northern lights visible in 17 states. And
Wow.
so we should be able to see it from 10 o'clock, I think, until 2 o'clock in the morning.
No, that's
And
pretty cool.
so, hey, if you're up late
Mhm.
and you want to go experience the northern lights, get away from the city lights and, that light pollution, and go head out to the countryside a little bit and go watch the northern lights.
Well, that doesn't happen very often. That's pretty cool.
No, no, Patty says Crater Lake will be it. There you go. It'll be lit, I should say. And so I think I'm gonna go look for it. I'm gonna go look because I've seen it once when I was up in the mountains, actually up in the
Mhm,
Wallowas, and I was
mhm,
camping.
mhm.
And I went, oh my gosh, there's the Northern Lights. It was so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, your
So
neck of the woods, it should be pretty easy. We'll see what we get here, but that would be really cool.
yeah, yeah. All right. Well, hey, everybody, thank you. Have a great night and share the message. Thanks for being with us. A lot of great comments tonight. We really, really appreciate it. And Don, it's wonderful seeing you again. And I'll see you next week.
I love Wonderful Wednesday. Take care, everybody.
Night.